It was 5:32 in the morning when my bedroom door slammed open so hard it hit the wall behind it. My heart jumped, jolted out of sleep by the sound of my parents storming into my room like they were raiding a criminal den. My mother's voice sliced through the air first. "How dare you deny your brother 7.5 thousand Brazilian reals?" My father wasn't far behind, pointing an accusing finger at me like I was some thief. "You selfish girl. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." I sat up slowly, dazed, trying to understand what was happening. I wasn't dreaming, was I? The clock confirmed the time, but everything else felt unreal. My mother was crying, not the soft, broken kind of crying. It was that loud, performative wailing she used when she wanted attention or sympathy. And my father? He was red with fury. I blinked, still groggy. "What are you talking about?" They didn't answer. Instead, my mother went straight to my closet and started yanking out my clothes, throwing them into a suitcase. "Take your things and go away," she screamed, not even looking at me. "You don't deserve to be in this house anymore." And that's when I laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't a joyful laugh or a mocking one. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when your brain short-circuits from too much shock and pain at once. They paused, just for a second, as if they couldn't believe I was laughing. I stood up calmly. My bare feet touched the cold floor, but inside I was burning. My parents had barged into my room before, usually over some imagined offense, but this was new. Being thrown out because I wouldn't hand over 7.5 thousand Brazilian reals to my brother, money I had earned, saved, and protected, felt like the final slap in the face I didn't know I was waiting for. I looked at them. My mother was now clenching one of my jackets in her fist like it had personally insulted her. My father looked ready to throw my laptop out the window. That's when I realized this wasn't about money. This was about control, about entitlement. I could feel my lip tremble, but I didn't let a tear fall. Not this time. "You really think I owe him that?" I asked softly. "You owe this family everything," my dad barked. "He's your brother. You're supposed to help him." But I wasn't going to beg. Not anymore. Let them pack my things. Let them scream. I wasn't scared. Not today. Because I had a secret, and they were about to learn who really had the power in this house. I've always known my place in the family. Daniel was the son, bright, adored, and constantly praised. And I was the shadow that learned how to shrink, just enough not to be in his way. Growing up, it was subtle at first. He'd get an A on a test, and my mom would throw a little party, balloons, cake, the whole thing. I once got straight A's for an entire year, and all I got was a pat on the back and a, "Well, that's what we expect from you." That line stayed with me. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because it was the first time I realized expectations for me weren't the same as love. They were duties I didn't ask for. Daniel failed a math class? He must be stressed. I got AB once and was asked if I was losing focus. He could sleep in, skip chores, break curfew. Every mistake he made was just a phase. Every move I made had to be perfect, or it was an embarrassment. I was the reliable one, which is just code for you're not allowed to mess up. And when things got tough financially, guess who they came to? Me. Not the son they pampered and praised, me. I was still in college when they first asked for help with bills. I drained my savings, thinking maybe that would finally earn me some appreciation. Instead, it became expected. Like, of course Emily will fix everything. She always does. Daniel, on the other hand, would waltz in with his latest failed business idea, and they'd smile like he was Elon Musk. They co-signed loans for him, bailed him out when he messed up emotionally, financially, legally. But when I asked for help covering tuition one semester, I got a long talk about independence and not being a burden. I started to see the pattern more clearly as I got older. The more I gave, the more invisible I became. And Daniel, he could do no wrong, even when he was clearly wrong. Like the time he borrowed my car without asking and crashed it? They didn't get mad at him. They asked me why I hadn't gotten better insurance. So when that morning came, when they burst into my room yelling about how dare I deny Daniel money, I wasn't shocked by the favoritism, but I was done with it. They raised me to serve him, not to be seen. but I had started to see myself, and I was done shrinking. Manipulation doesn't always look like yelling or threats. Sometimes it sounds like, "You're the only one we can count on, Emily." Or, "He's your brother, he needs you." And for years I believed them. It started small. Gas money here, a loan there. My mom would call, voice trembling. "Your father's blood pressure is high again. Daniel lost his job. Can you help us cover the mortgage this month?" And of course I did. I always did. Because somewhere deep inside I thought if I gave enough, loved enough, they'd finally see me. But the bar kept moving. I was working 2 jobs and still sending money home while Daniel quit his 3rd startup in 6 months and took a vacation to Rio. I'd call my parents, voice cracking from exhaustion, and they'd say things like, "We know it's hard, sweetheart, but Daniel is going through a tough time." Tough time? He was partying while I skipped meals to keep up with bills. It wasn't just the money. Emotionally, I was the family dumping ground. Every crisis came to me. My mom crying about Daniel's gambling debts? I listened. My dad raging about another loan default? I soothed. I became their therapist, banker, emotional sponge, all while being told how lucky I was that I wasn't the one with problems. But the worst part? Whenever things spiraled, when Daniel crashed another car, or when my parents defaulted on a loan they took for him, they'd look at me like I was the failure, as if I hadn't done enough, as if I should have predicted his next mess and stopped it before it happened. There was a year when I paid off one of Daniel's debts, $3,000 he owed to some sketchy lender. I didn't have that kind of money lying around. I took out a credit card I couldn't afford. When I told my mom about the interest piling up, she sighed and said, "You shouldn't make us feel guilty, Emily. You did it out of love, didn't you?" That line burned, because they did make me feel guilty, constantly, and every time I tried to pull away, even a little, they'd bring out the big guns. Family sticks together. You're not like your brother. Don't be selfish. But I wasn't selfish. I was being drained. Slowly, painfully by the people who were supposed to protect me. And Daniel, he walked around like a king, knowing I'd clean up his messes. He never said thank you. Never apologized. If anything, he seemed annoyed when I didn't hand over money fast enough. Looking back, I don't know how I lasted as long as I did. But those years, they wore me down, until one day I couldn't do it anymore. The message came late, just as I was winding down from a long day at work. My phone buzzed. It was my mother, for words that made my stomach drop. "Your brother needs help." I didn't even have to open the text to know what was coming. Still, I did. And there it was. Daniel got into some trouble. Gambling again. "We need $7,500. Just for now." I froze. $7,500. That wasn't pocket change. That was my entire savings. The money I'd scraped together over 2 exhausting years, juggling 2 jobs, living off ramen, cutting corners just to finally afford my own apartment. A safe space. A dream I had built piece by piece. And they wanted me to throw it away again. For him. The same brother who had blown through 3 jobs, maxed out credit cards, wrecked a borrowed car, and yet still got a standing ovation every time he walked into the house. He was the golden son, after all. No matter how many times he messed up, there was always another excuse, another bailout, another, "He just needs support." But me? I was the one they leaned on, the dependable one, the fixer, the one who didn't ask for much, which meant they gave even less. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Then I typed a word I'd never dared say before. No. Just that. No apology. No softening. Just no. I turned off my phone, crawled into bed, and for the first time in my life, I felt the smallest flicker of power. I had drawn a boundary, a firm, unapologetic boundary, and it exploded in my face. At dawn, my bedroom door slammed open. I jolted awake as my parents stormed in, wild-eyed and furious like I had committed some unspeakable crime. "How dare you deny your brother?" my mother shrieked. My father was shaking with rage. "After everything we've done for you? You selfish little girl." I sat up, stunned, heart racing. "Are you serious right now?" "Pack your things," my father bellowed. "If you can't support this family, you don't belong in it." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was finally painfully clear. I wasn't their daughter. I was their lifeline, their backup wallet, their emotional sponge. But not anymore. They didn't see it yet, but that no wasn't just a refusal. It was the beginning of the end for them, and the beginning of something new for me, something stronger. As my parents raged at me, telling me to get out of the house, something inside me clicked. I'd spent my entire life accommodating their whims, their needs, their endless demands. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I'd been preparing for this moment, the moment when I could finally stand on my own 2 feet, when I wouldn't be shackled to their expectations any longer. 2 years ago, I had made a decision. I had quietly begun saving, stashing away a little bit from each paycheck, all while pretending to be the obedient daughter they expected. No one knew. Not my parents, not even Daniel. I had learned the art of keeping secrets, especially the ones that would set me free. I didn't just save money, I invested it. I opened a separate bank account, one they couldn't touch, and slowly built a small fund. At first, it was for a rainy day, but over time it became my escape fund. The escape from the family who had manipulated me for so long, from the brother who never took responsibility, from the parents who only saw me as their personal resource. And then last year I did it. I bought a small house. Nothing extravagant, but it was mine. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even in a fancy neighborhood, but it was my sanctuary, my place of peace, a home where I could be myself without constantly being dragged into their drama. I signed the papers in secret, kept the documents hidden in a drawer, and never breathed a word about it to anyone. The confrontation with my parents that morning, the chaos they unleashed, only accelerated what I knew I had to do next. I had already planned for my departure. The house was ready, the money in place. And now I would finally show them that I was no longer the naive girl who would drop everything for them. When my father screamed at me to leave, I simply walked to my room and began packing my things slowly, deliberately, as if I were moving for a fresh start, not just because I was being thrown out. The house I had been renting was no longer a place of refuge. It was a prison. And as I packed, I felt a strange sense of calm. It wasn't fear that filled me. It was certainty. I was leaving, and there was no going back. I wasn't just walking out the door. I was walking away from a lifetime of betrayal and sacrifice. They could never understand the work I'd put into building a life of my own. The late nights, the sacrifices, the countless times I had to put my own dreams on hold just to help them. None of it had been seen. None of it had been appreciated. But that was about to change. When I was done packing, I grabbed the envelope I had hidden in the back of my drawer. Inside was the deed to my new house in my name. The house I had built for myself. The house that would now be my refuge. As I walked out of that door for the last time, I felt a rush of exhilaration. This was it. The grand plan was in motion. The tension in the room was suffocating. My parents stood there, their faces red with anger, still yelling at me to pack my things and get out. I could feel their fury, like heat radiating off of them. But inside, something had shifted. No longer was I the passive, obedient daughter who lived in their shadow. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. They had taken so much from me over the years, manipulating my kindness and using it against me. And now, finally, it was my turn to take control of the situation, to show them exactly how far I had come. I calmly stood up, my movements slow, deliberate. They were so consumed with their anger, they didn't even notice the change in me. The confident, self-assured version of me that I'd spent years building was now standing in front of them. I walked over to the desk where I had placed the folder. It was simple, just a plain manila folder with one piece of paper inside. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, just a single document that would change everything. I reached down, grabbed the folder, and held it out in front of me. My heart beat a little faster, but it wasn't fear I felt. It was anticipation. They were about to realize how thoroughly I'd outgrown them. With a quiet but firm voice, I spoke. Here, take a look at this. They hesitated for a moment, clearly confused. But as soon as they saw the deed in my hands, their faces twisted in disbelief. I could see the gears turning in their heads as they processed the reality of what I was handing them. Their entitled rage slowly turned into something else, panic. My mother snatched the document from my hands, her eyes scanning it quickly, desperately looking for a mistake. But there was none. It was all there in black and white. The house they had been living in for years, the one they thought was mine by virtue of their position in my life, was actually in my name. I don't understand, my father stammered. His face had drained of color. His once confident, authoritative presence now seemed weak and frail. This can't be right. I let you stay here, I said quietly, watching their confusion morph into sheer panic. Out of kindness, I thought it was the right thing to do. But this house, this life you've taken for granted, it's mine, not yours. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence between us was thick, oppressive. I could almost hear the panic rising in their minds as they tried to grasp what I had just revealed. It was like a rug had been pulled out from under them. Their comfortable world, the one they had built on my sacrifices, was crumbling. Emily, you don't understand, my mother pleaded, her voice trembling. But there was no sincerity in her tone, only fear. Fear of losing everything they had taken for granted. I shook my head, finally allowing myself to smile. Oh, I understand perfectly. The roles had reversed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one begging for approval, for love, for recognition. I had the power now. The tables had turned, and I was finally free. I stood there, watching as the panic spread across their faces. They had thought they could control me forever, manipulate me into giving, sacrificing, bending to their will. But now I had the upper hand. And this time it was my turn to call the shots. The room was alive with chaos. My parents, who had once been the pillars of this so-called family, were crumbling before my eyes. My mother's face was twisted with panic, her hands trembling as she clutched the deed to the house. My father, usually the one who held the reins, now stood there speechless, his face a mask of disbelief. The balance of power had shifted, and they didn't know how to handle it. Emily, please, my mother begged, her voice faltering. You can't do this. You don't understand how hard things are right now. Your brother, he's made some mistakes, but we're a family. You have to help us. Her words felt like knives in my chest, but I didn't let them show. I had heard those same pleas for years. Every time my brother messed up, every time they came to me for help. They always expected me to be the one to fix everything, to clean up the messes they couldn't bear to confront. But not anymore. I was done. No, I said, my voice steady but firm. I'm not helping anymore. You've had your chance. I'm not your backup plan anymore. Her face contorted in frustration, then anger, as if she couldn't quite grasp what was happening. How can you be so cold? She spat, her words sharp, meant to hurt. After everything we've done for you, after all we've sacrificed. I laughed bitterly. Sacrifice? You mean you used me, manipulated me into being your safety net while you let him run wild. You let him destroy everything, and I was the one who had to pay the price. My father, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. This is ridiculous, Emily. You've gone too far. You think you're some big shot now that you've bought a house? You're still our daughter. Don't forget that. I looked him in the eye. No, you've forgotten who I am. You think I'm just supposed to bend to your will because you're my parents, but I'm not a doormat anymore. Their faces were now a blend of fury and desperation. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but I could see the anger beneath it. She was no longer the woman I had once looked up to, the one who promised me that family always comes first. Now, all I saw was a person who was losing control, someone who had exploited my loyalty for years. And then, like a final twist of the knife, my brother burst through the door. His face was flush, his hair unkempt, his eyes darting nervously between the three of us. The sight of him made my stomach turn. He had no idea what was coming. He never did. What's going on? He asked, sounding more like a child than a grown man. Why is everyone yelling? I didn't even bother to answer him. I just pointed at him, my voice cold. You're the reason all of this is falling apart. His face twisted in confusion, but I could see a flicker of guilt in his eyes. He was finally realizing that the shield he had relied on for so long, his parents' protection, my silent support, was gone. And now, all of his bad decisions, all of his irresponsibility were coming to light. I didn't mean to, he stammered, his words trailing off, unable to defend himself. I could see the cracks in the facade now. The golden family image they had tried to maintain for so long was crumbling, piece by piece. It was no longer about helping each other or staying united. It was about survival, and for once, I wasn't going to be the one who sacrificed everything for their mistakes. My parents turned on each other, blaming each other for their son's failures. My father's voice rose in accusation. You always protected him. You let him do whatever he wanted. Now look at the mess we're in. My mother's eyes flashed with rage, and she shot back. Don't pretend you didn't encourage him. You always thought he was perfect, and now look where we are. I stood back and watched. For the first time, I wasn't caught up in the chaos. I wasn't part of the storm. I was watching it from the outside, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. The weight that had been on my shoulders for years was lifting piece by piece. This was the fallout of their actions. Their perfect image, their golden family, was nothing more than a carefully crafted lie. And as they turned on each other, I realized something that I had never fully understood before. I was free. I was finally free of them and the toxic family dynamic they had forced me into. They were unraveling, and I was no longer tangled in their mess. As I stood there, watching the chaos unfold before me, a strange sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fix things for everyone else. I wasn't tangled in their drama, their mistakes, or their guilt. I wasn't holding myself to the impossible standards they had set for me. I was standing on my own, finally free. The house felt different now. The once familiar walls that had held all the weight of my family's expectations now seemed hollow, devoid of any power over me. I could breathe again, and as much as I had loved them once, as much as I had sacrificed for them, I knew I couldn't continue living like that. The years of being the invisible daughter, the one who was expected to be quiet, to give, to help, had left their mark. But now, I was beginning to see myself clearly. I had always been there for them, always. But I had never been there for myself. I had lived my life through their eyes, measured my worth by their approval, and it had drained me. No more. I looked at the mess in front of me, the broken family, the accusations, the guilt, the anger. It wasn't mine to fix anymore. It wasn't my responsibility to bear the weight of their mistakes. They had taught me that love and loyalty meant sacrificing yourself. But I had learned, finally, that love doesn't come at the cost of your peace. And I was done sacrificing. My mother was still crying, my father still pacing, my brother retreating into the corner, defeated. They could beg, scream, guilt-trip me, but I wasn't the same person I used to be. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their validation. I had given up too much of myself for too long, and now I was taking it all back. I walked out of the room without another word. The house that I had once called home no longer felt like mine. My home was where I chose to make it, and for the first time I realized I didn't have to stay trapped in the cycle they had built for me. I could go anywhere, do anything. I had worked hard for my independence, and now I was going to live it. I spent the next few weeks settling into my new house, slowly but surely. The space was quiet, peaceful. No yelling, no manipulation, no expectations, just me, my dreams, and my future. It was everything I had been yearning for, and I had built it on my own terms. And as the days passed, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I didn't need to hold on to the resentment that had followed me for so long. I had freed myself from the weight of their demands. It was time to protect my peace, to nourish the woman I had become. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their love if it came with strings attached. I had learned to love myself, to finally see my worth. And as I looked in the mirror, I saw someone strong, someone capable, someone who deserved to live for herself, not for anyone else. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, not by them, but by me. And that was enough.